The content in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be medical advice, a diagnosis, or a treatment plan for any individual. Listening to this podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Always consult your own qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your health, medication, or lifestyle. By choosing to listen further, you acknowledge and agree to these terms.
Welcome to Feeling Good Feels Good with Dr. Tripp.
Welcome to a state of feeling good. It's how we live and how you could. Just know it's how we're all meant to be. If things are off, listen to your body. It can tell us exactly what we need. Physical, emotional, nutritional, or mentally. No need to worry, it's reached accessibly. No matter how you felt or what you've heard, well-being's for everyone, it's what you deserve. Ease and joy are yours once it's understood. No need to fear, because feeling good feels good.
Welcome into Feeling Good Feels Good. I am your host, Dr. Tripp. This is the podcast where we talk about total wellness and outright wellness. We look at wellness through four major categories: physical health, nutritional and chemical health, environmental, lifestyle, and habit, as well as mental and emotional health. Today's episode is going to be based around physical wellness. Do you have low back pain? Do you feel like your hips are tight? You have poor posture, or maybe you have trouble stopping and starting movement. If any of those apply to you, this is an episode for you. Today, we're talking about hamstrings. One thing that I found interesting when researching this topic was the theme of feeling stuck, or physically being stuck with dysfunction in your hamstrings. Because your hamstrings aren't just leg muscles. They're actually braking systems and postural stabilizers. And according to some practitioners, they can also be seen as emotional anchors. In today's episode, we're going to break down the anatomy of the hamstring, the ways they affect your daily life, and how we all use them all day long, the science behind why they become tight, weak, or dysfunctional, how to correct hamstring dysfunction, and we're even going to go through some historical stories and find out some very fun, interesting facts about the hamstring. You will leave this episode knowing whether your hamstrings are holding you back. The hamstrings are comprised of three main muscles. You may have heard of your bicep in your arm, but your hamstrings also have a bicep called your bicep femoris. The same way your bicep flexes your arm, your hamstrings are the ones that flex your leg. Where are your hamstrings? Well, if you're sitting down, you're probably sitting on the top part of your hamstrings. The hamstrings are the muscles on the back of your thigh. The hamstrings start at what's called your sits bones. If you are a yogi, you probably heard this term before. If you're in anatomy, you probably heard it called the ischial tuberosity or your butt bone. If you are sitting down right now, you are sitting on the bones right on the bottom of your butt, where the hamstrings start. They run all the way down the back of your leg and then split and connect to the outside part of your knee as well as the inside part of your knee, right below the knee joint. So what do? Again, the main action is that they flex the knee, but they are involved in many movements throughout the day. The other major movement that they do is extend the hips. So think about when you stand up and you stand up straight and your hips come forward. That is hip extension. That is the secondary main movement for hamstring. This is crucial for basic movements like running, walking, jumping, and especially walking upstairs. One of the main responsibilities of the hamstring is actually to be a brake for your leg. Not braking the leg, but like brakes in a car, where the brakes stop the wheels. The hamstrings are the brakes that stop the legs from going too far forward that you fall over. This is actually a major reason that they tear or get injured, and we will get into that more later. Another responsibility of the hamstring is to work with the quad to stabilize the knee and prevent knee injuries. Hamstrings are powered by a powerful nerve called the sciatic nerve. Some of you may have heard of the term sciatica. What's interesting about this is the hamstrings are on the back of your leg, and sciatic nerve pain also occurs in the back of the leg. How to tell the difference between sciatic pain and a hamstring injury are one of the many topics we're going to go through in this episode. Our hamstrings are very strong. They can absorb about 8 times our body weight when they are decelerating our leg movement. Hamstring strength is highly correlated with decreased back pain and reduced chance for injury. One of the most common injuries we see in sports is not only a hamstring injury, but an ACL tear. If you watch sports, you've seen an athlete go down with an ACL tear. Why does that matter for this episode? One of the biggest predictors for ACL tears is actually an imbalance between your quadriceps, the muscles on the front of your thigh, and the hamstrings, the muscles on the back of your thigh. When hamstrings become too weak and quads become too dominant, there is an increased risk for ACL tear. But what's very interesting is the ratio actually isn't 50-50. You do want your hamstrings to only be about 60 to 80% as strong as your quadriceps. And this varies person to person and can vary in different sports. But as a general rule of thumb, you want your hamstrings to be about 60 to 80% as strong as your quadriceps. So if you were in the gym and you were doing quad extensions as well as hamstring curls, say you were doing a quad extension of 100 pounds, you would want your hamstring curl to be about 60 to 80 pounds. And that is a safe ratio to protect your knee and the ligaments in the front of your knee. Sprinters definitely have a higher ratio. They are going to be one of the demographics with the strongest hamstrings. So a sprinter is going to have less of a gap between their hamstring strength and their quad strength. Having an unbalanced hamstring to quad ratio actually gives you a 4 times multiplier chance for injury. So you are 4 times more likely to injure your leg if this ratio is imbalanced. Quads can often get overtrained. Cycling, squatting, leg press, these are common ways. If these are movements that you're doing, you want to ensure that you are maintaining hamstring strength as well. Hamstring curls, deadlifts, we're going to get into those a little bit more, but these are some basics that you can start to look at if you are somebody who performs a lot of cycling, a lot of squats, or a lot of leg press. Some people will consider another muscle a fake or a false hamstring, and this is one of your groin muscles. The groin muscles, or the adductors, are the muscles that bring your legs together. Think of adding your legs back to your body, adductors. In my practice, I see patients with weak adductors or weak groin muscles, and this is one of the demographics with the highest incidence of tight hamstrings, irritated hamstrings, hamstrings causing imbalance in their low back, hips, and overall dysfunction. Because the hamstrings and adductors, groin muscles, are so close together, the hamstrings can take over the job of the adductors. In day-to-day life, we do a lot of forward moving, running, sprinting, getting up from a chair, walking forward, but we don't actually do a lot of side-to-side movement. Because of this, the adductors and the groin muscles become weak over time. The hamstrings start to get into the habit of doing more work, leading to hamstring tightness. How do you know if you have hamstring tightness? One of the most common cues is if you can't sit up straight in good posture without pulling your feet backwards, without having your knees flexed a little bit. So if you're sitting down and listening to this, see if you can bring your feet in front of your knee, bring your feet forward in front of your knee without losing good posture. If that's difficult, likely there is some tightness in your hamstring. Because this is a podcast about total wellness, I do like to look at other providers, other schools of thought, including somatics. And one of the ways that somatic therapists look at hamstrings is they are tight when people are emotionally stuck, when people are having trouble moving forward. I found this very interesting and reflective of what the hamstrings represent overall. Because these are our braking systems, they slow us down, because when they are tight, we physically have trouble moving forward. It's like trying to move a car with the parking brake on. Healthy hamstrings don't only prevent injury, they increase performance. From running faster to jumping higher, healthy hamstrings actually increase explosive power. Some other cues of hamstring issues are chronic lower back achiness and stiffness, inability to stabilize the knee during lunging movement with body weight or while holding weight. Of course, you can get muscle cramping. You might feel like you have a Charlie horse in the back of the leg. That is an indicator of hamstring dysfunction as well. And the classic, can I bend forward and touch my toes? While this is not 100% indicative of hamstring issues because other parts of the body are involved in this movement, if you're having trouble touching your toes and you feel tightness in your hamstring, it's probably part of the puzzle. And while hamstring tightness does not always cause lower back achiness and discomfort, about 70% of people with achy low back pain also have tight hamstrings. It's been reported that 15 to 30% of adults report hamstring tightness when doing physical activity. Sprinting, especially sprinting when you don't practice it or warm up properly, is the most common cause for hamstring strains and tears. You can have mild tears that just feel like a muscle spasm, all the way up to severe tears that cause swelling and severe pain. And there's a spectrum of degree of tear in between mild and severe. If you've studied anatomy or physical therapy, you've probably heard about stretch weakened hamstrings. More recent data actually shows that hamstrings can be tight and weak simultaneously. This is often what I'm seeing in my office. Football players, soccer players, and dancers have the highest incidence of hamstring injury. Older adults who have lived a sedentary lifestyle, for example, if they were desk workers for a long career, have the highest incidence of tightness in their hamstrings. You may hear people say, I feel out of balance. I feel like my hips are off. I feel like one leg is longer than the other. Hamstring dysfunction and balance can be a key factor in the sensation. You might even notice when you're walking, one leg swings easier than the other. Checking in with if you have difficulty extending your knee when you're walking, if you feel unstable with running, jumping, or lunging, that can be another key of hamstring dysfunction. Frequent muscle cramps in the back of the leg, your hamstrings are definitely in play there. Let's do a funny hypothetical. What if you had no hamstrings or very severe hamstring weakness? Your knees would actually bend backwards. If you want a visual of what this would look like, there's actually an old movie this always reminds me of. It's called Arrival. One of the things the aliens do is actually make the human knee bend backwards. So if you want a visual of what this looks like, pull up a clip of the Arrival and you'll see people walking with their knees bent backwards. Very silly looking. Hamstring injuries can account for 30% of all muscle injuries in sports, especially contact sports. And recurrence of injury is extremely high. It can be up to 34% even with rehab. But without proper rehab, the chances that somebody will re-injure their hamstring is extremely high. We've talked a lot about what goes wrong with the hamstrings. So what happens if your hamstrings are working well? You're going to have easy movement, getting in and out of chairs. Posture will feel easier. You're going to have less back pain, walking, running, lunging. A lot of movement where you go forwards, backwards, sit, stand, sitting upright. Standing will feel very comfortable. You will be faster. You will be able to jump higher. You will have an easier time with explosive movements, and your movements will be more explosive. Your agility will be better. Your chance for low back pain and low back injury will be lower. If we look at somatic therapists and acupuncturists, somatic therapists will say you will have an easier time moving forward in life. Acupuncturists use hamstring points not only to release hamstring tension and decrease sciatic nerve pain, but to improve bladder function. Bladder points are one of the main points on the hamstring in acupuncture. Reducing tightness here can calm stress, hormones, and relax the body. Healthy hamstrings are not reserved for athletes. Healthy hamstrings that are mobile, flexible, as well as strong are very important for everybody, especially older adults, desk workers, postpartum recovery, anybody recovering from a lower leg injury. We can start to see how this impacts everybody, from those who are highly sedentary to those who are highly active. Now, what if your hamstrings were super strong? What if you had super strong hamstrings and everything else was normal? Well, you'd be walking around with your knees flexed at all times. You could probably jump very high and stop yourself, but you wouldn't be able to stand up straight. You'd be stuck in a squat position, and you'd probably look like Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Okay, so how do I take care of my hamstrings? The best movements for strengthening hamstrings are Nordic curls, deadlifts, glute bridges, and single leg deadlifts. It's essential to keep strong hip glute muscles as well as a strong core. These muscles work as a unit, and having a strong core and strong hips will allow you to maintain strong hamstrings. How about for stretching? For stretching, I have two pieces of advice. One is to do active stretching. Rather than just holding a stretch, move back and forth in and out of the stretch. Get some blood pumping through the area. Make sure the fibers are moving a little bit. So rather than doing a long static stretch, do an active stretch where you come in and out of the very top of your ability to stretch. The other recommendation I have for hamstring stretching is using straps. A lot of times when we try to bend forward, touch our toes, stretch our hamstring, we're actually just curling our low back a lot. So in order to isolate the hamstrings, you actually want to lay on your back, put a strap around your heel, and pull the strap up and backwards. You will notice a very clear difference between the stretch in your back and the stretch in your hamstring. When you have that stretch, continue to do active stretching back and forth. How long will it take you to restore hamstring health? Well, if you don't have severe injury, you're just noticing tightness, weakness, some of these cues that I've talked about match what you're feeling. If you're actively doing stretching and strengthening exercises about 2 to 3 times a week, you can bring back proper health for your hamstrings in about 4 to 6 weeks. Of course, everybody is different. You need proper diet, rest, posture, but just doing hamstring stretching and strengthening 2 to 3 times a week for 4 to 6 weeks, you will feel a very noticeable change and improvement in how you feel in your day-to-day life and move through your daily activities. Where did the term hamstring come from? Well, it's actually from medieval times. It derived from hamstrung. In medieval times, during ancient warfare, soldiers would slice the hamstrings of their enemies or anybody they were trying to punish so that they could no longer walk. So if you weren't sure if the hamstrings were important before, even back to medieval times, soldiers knew to cut the hamstring. If you cut the hamstring, the person is no longer functional. Being able to bend over and touch your toes does not necessarily mean that your hamstring is healthy. It's a good sign that you have mobility, but we want to make sure that they can contract and decelerate and support you walking, especially walking up steps. So after listening today, I hope you understand that hamstrings are more than just the muscles on the back of your leg. When they are off, you can feel it everywhere. When they work well, your movement seems effortless. There's some evidence supporting that they not only hold you back physically, but emotionally as well. So check in with your body. Notice if you feel any of these sensations. You can start with some basic training like we talked about today. You can reach out to your local provider. Make sure you balance your training and you tap in with your body. Listen to the signs. We're going to continue discussing certain signals, certain sensations, and break down what it means. This is just one of the many ways that you can listen to your body. During the course of this podcast, we're going to continue to teach you how to listen to signs, signals, feelings, movements that feel easy, hard, difficult, and understand what's going on. And feel free to share this with a friend who you think might have tight hamstrings, they're slow, they're curled over, their posture is poor, or you've heard them complain about their leg hurting. Until next time, feeling good feels good.